Welcome, welcome, everybody. Welcome to Greater Life, Greater Impact. I'm Janet. Oh my gosh, I had butterflies just starting the Zoom class this morning because it's been a long time since we have hung out together. I'm so excited to see your smiling faces. Super excited to see you guys jumping on. I didn't think anybody was going to jump on. I've been gone for quite a long time. So thanks for coming back and thanks for connecting. Today, the topic again. If you want to catch the replay of today's class, you can go over to my YouTube channel, which is Greater Life, Greater Impact, and look it up. It's on the list of videos. We've been talking about spiritual sovereignty all year this year, and we've taken sovereignty in a whole bunch of different directions. And so today, I really want to focus on the specific direction of autonomy and how that relates to sovereignty. And what sparked the desire to talk about this today was I've had about 12 conversations just this week alone in my private coaching, private mentoring, where this keeps coming up. And so I just feel like, you know what, this is worthy of us talking about together. And my disclaimer, oh, you guys have missed me too. Thank you for saying so. Yes, you've been missed, but I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself. Yes, self-care is very important, and I have been doing that. But I want you guys to put your thinking caps on. I would love your participation. I would love to hear your feedback as to what do those two terms mean to you? What does sovereignty mean to you? What does autonomy mean to you? And while you're thinking about those things, and I know you're going to go look it up on your phones, I did it too this morning because I was like, we really need to define we really need better definition as to what the word sovereignty looks like, what it means to us personally as we're navigating through our lives. So I did actually go look it up this morning because I knew we were going to be talking about it. My disclaimer this morning is don't believe a word I say. I'm not your guru. I am no expert in any of this stuff. I'm just here having conversation with you. And based on some of the things that I'm experiencing and witnessing and seeing in the lives of people that I connect with on a regular basis. And because of what I do as a quantum healer, I get to talk to a lot of people. And so I see patterns and I see similarities in conversations that are continually coming up and concerns and questions that people have. So that is definitely what sparked the topic for today, which is spiritual, eternal sovereignty and autonomy. And what does that look like in your life? And why is it even important? Why is it even important? Wow, that could be our first question. Why is spiritual, eternal autonomy and sovereignty important to you? Here, let me just open up the chat so that I can see it. Feel free to unmute your mics. Feel free. Katie says, woohoo, glory, glory, we're back. Thank you, Janet. Yeah, this is awesome to get to talk to you guys. So I see that Lisa is unmuted. Lisa, do you have anything to share in regards to what is spiritual sovereignty and autonomy to you?
Yes, before answering the question, why is it important for, for eternity? I think, first I think we need to define it so we can wrap our heads around why it would be. But just in the past, as I've pondered sovereignty without looking it up, I think of, there's sovereign nations. And if a nation is sovereign, then what does that mean? And I think it means that they don't depend on other nations for their well-being or the things that they need. And so you boil that down as us as a soul with our spirit and body, we're a nation unto ourselves. Then we don't depend on others for our mental well-being or whatever. We're independent and flourish without having to rely on other people.
Yes, but also having the ability to be interdependent without being codependent, right? So I love that you said that. I love that you related it to sovereign nation. Oftentimes when we think of the term sovereign, we think of kings and queens and nations and governments. And that is actually predominantly what came up when I Googled it this morning, because I wanted to know what is the general census when it comes to what the term sovereignty and autonomy means. So I'm going to share with you what I looked up. Here we've got some comments here before we jump into that. We live in this earthly plane where free will can be exercised, ergo using free will to make choices. Yes, awesome. Thanks, Juliet, for sharing that. So as I looked up the term sovereignty, it said acting independently without outside interference. It talked a bit about there being a supreme power. So someone who is sovereign, a nation who is sovereign, is a supreme power over their own nation that they govern. It is the highest authority. So if you think about how that relates to you, if you are your own kingdom, you are the queen or the king of your own kingdom, how does sovereignty relate to you personally on a personal and on a spiritual level? What does that mean? What does it look like? Why is it important? So acting independently without outside interference, supreme power and supreme authority, self-governing. So, yeah, I think you were absolutely right there when you talked about being the queen or king of our own nation, which is our own life, really. Autonomy. So then I flipped over to look at autonomy and see how is that different from sovereignty, and really is not a whole lot different from the definition of sovereignty, but autonomy said pretty much the same thing. To be autonomous is someone who is self-governing, free from external control or manipulation. An agent acting in accordance with interpersonal morality rather than external philosophy. Wow, that's profound. I'm going to read that again because I think it's so good. It's an agent unto themselves, acting in accordance with their own interpersonal morality rather than acting in accordance with external philosophy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And how does that relate to you personally? So I'm going to ask this question. I will ask a series of questions, and I recommend you grab a pencil and a paper and start jotting some of this down, because you might want to journal it out to get clarity as to how these principles affect you and how they relate to you and how they're going to relate to you moving forward in your life as you make choices. And why are you making those choices? You know, I've always been a, hold on. I have always been a proponent of allowing people to have their own journey, allowing people to have their own path without placing a whole lot of external judgment on them, like you're doing it wrong, you're not following the status quo, or you're not following the group, or you're not whatever. I've always felt like every individual human being should have the right to follow their own individual path, as long as it doesn't remove the agency or the free will or sovereignty of another human soul, right? And that's awesome. I mean, it's good that you should be able to navigate your way through your own life and think your own thoughts and believe your own beliefs. But at the end of the day, you better know why. You better have a good understanding as to why you believe those things and why you follow those things. Sherry, go ahead. I noticed you're unmuted.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out what in the heck is the matter with my phone. Just ignore me.
Oh, no, it's totally fine. If you guys have comments or things that you want to add, feel free just jump in at any time, because this is an open discussion for sure. But I want you to consider and ponder on this question, what are you willing to do for your freedom and your autonomy? Lisa, did you have something?
Well, the comment you made, when you said but at the end of the day, you better understand, and I don't know, or know.
You better know why.
But what followed with what you said, it's like, oh my goodness, but like in my own personal life, that seems like it's shifted up. Like, I think you said like what you believe or what you, or why you're doing what you did. And it seems like as life has evolved for me personally, that's shifted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes. And this is why we're having this discussion today, because I've had this conversation 12 times just this week alone with various different people who have said, I feel like I'm losing my mind. In fact, one of the people that I worked with earlier this week said that was a big part of their personal spiritual awakening process, was that they felt like they'd lost their ever living mind. And that's kind of scary, but also beautiful and liberating at the same time, to step out of some of these paradigms, step out of some of these kingdoms, I guess, if you want to call it that. Like, how do you operate in the kingdom that you find yourself in? And I've really been thinking about the term kingdoms a lot lately because of these conversations that keep coming up. So, you know, in LDS culture, we talk about the three different tiered kingdoms, like a telestial kingdom, a terrestrial kingdom, and a celestial kingdom. And each of those kingdoms have different rules. They have different parameters. They have different ways that they operate and function. And so, what are you willing to do for your freedom? That's the question of today. So in relation to talking about sovereignty and autonomy, being the king or queen of your own kingdom, let's talk about kingdoms for a minute, because I've really been thinking too about, and I would love your perspective on this too. I've been thinking a lot about, well, what does God's kingdom look like? What would God's kingdom look like? I wonder about that. And I've been wondering a lot about it. Angela says, lose your mind to find your soul. Wow, so well put. Thank you for sharing that. That is well put. So as we ponder and we consider, what does God's kingdom look like versus what does man's kingdom look like? Holy cow, we could go down a rabbit hole for days just on those two different topics. But I just want to really quickly touch on a couple of things that came to my mind, and then I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Juliet says, what I'm willing to do and in the process of doing, cutting the marital ties, physical separation from husband for a full year, a year of waiting, a year of patience in the Baha'i faith. Interesting concepts. So even just talking about the marital paradigm, there's a reason why they call it, what do they call it? Wedlock, right? You think about some of the terms, the bond of marriage, and how we in our societal systems and cultures bond ourselves and lock ourselves into these various different relationships. Well, humanity hasn't always done that. Humanity has only been doing that for a few generations, a handful of generations, when you consider how many civilizations have been on this earth and have populated this world. It hasn't always been the way we do it, which is predominantly monogamy. I was talking to somebody just this past week, and they were sharing what they had learned in regards to, this was a YouTube video I was watching, and he was sharing what he had learned and discovered in regards to the conditioning of our culture as it relates to relationships and marriage and monogamy. And that largely has been influenced by French Romanticism and Victorianism. Well, where do we predominantly find French Romanticism and Victorianism? Disney. Look at how good the programming is over French Romanticism and Victorianism. And we think that because we see it over and over and over, that is the way, that is how God's kingdom must operate, because it's being shown to us in our world. And, you know, I'm not here to define what God's kingdom looks like. That's not my job. That's between you and God to discover those things. But I often see and feel that God's kingdom is a place where there are millions, if not billions, of ascended beings operating together in free will, not necessarily trying to interfere with each other's sovereignty or autonomy, but supporting and loving and helping to facilitate each other's growth, helping to facilitate their success. And I see God's kingdom as a much more open system than what we experience here in the 3D mortal plane, where there is a lot of bondage and bonds and contracts and covenants that lock you into a specific way. So when you contrast the open, free society that I felt like described God's kingdom, and you can see it in whatever way you want to see it, but that's how I have chosen to see it. When you contrast a godly kingdom where it's an open society to the type of kingdom that we live in here in this mortal plane with other human beings, there is a lot of bondage. We do live in a slavery system. We're obligated to systems and cultures and traditions and programs, and it's almost like we're here learning under the spell of amnesia, so that we can learn to have godly attributes and principles become a part of our nature, until we learn how to burn through the karmic debt that we have. And so it's one of the reasons and the purposes for us being here in this bondage state. We are in a state of bondage. We do live in a state of slavery to some degree in almost all of the systems. If you look at every system that human beings plug themselves into, whether it be marriage, culture, government, economy, society, all of the different systems that we can plug ourselves into, family, relationship. I mean, there's so many different ways that we've been patterned and programmed and conditioned to see things. And we go about our life thinking, well, that's just how it is. It's just the way that it is because you live here in this world, and so you must conform because that's just how it is. But we're here for learning for that very purpose, right? And so as we learn to become more godly, as we desire to learn to become more godly, and we progress through the way that we react and respond to all of these systems and to all of this programming, we can either advance and become more celestial and more godly in our approach until we've burned through us the desire to be evil or ungodly, or to exercise compulsion or control or manipulation over others. So we're here for that purpose, to work through these systems until we've had those lower level principles burned through us. And we do it through experience. So I want you to think about some of the different systems that you're plugged into in your life, like culture, family, relationship, religion, society, maybe your work environment, whatever the environment is that you find yourself in. Most of us find ourselves in our work environment for a large portion of our lives. The majority of our days are spent being a slave to a system where we can earn the right to survive. How upside down and backwards is that? So where is the conditioning of the various different systems in your life? Where is that conditioning preventing you from following your heart, from following your bliss, from following the nudges of God within you? Where are these systems breaking down and preventing you from following your heart? Because when you truly learn how to follow your heart and your soul, as opposed to your mind and the conditioning, you're following a godly path. That is a godly path. Your soul, your heart, your intuition, your higher self, whatever you want to call that governing system, that guidance inner GPS system, that is following God. Yeah, Juliet says, we're on a taxation slave farm, eh? Yeah. Yeah, we live in a slavery system. In fact, I talk to people sometimes who will say that, oh, I got to get back to work, back into the slave system. And it really is, when you think about, when you break it down and think about, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? We work and slave away the majority of the time that we spend on this planet just to earn the right to survive. So I want you to think about some of the systems, maybe jot down some of the ones that stick out for you, whether it be relationship, family, culture, religion, economy, government, work, whatever it might be. You jot down the ones that pop up in your own mind. Okay. I wanted to share something else that came up in one of the conversations that I had with somebody. And this was a very elevated conversation, and I loved what he said. He shared with me 6 different ironies of this 3D world that we live in. And I think that this applies to what we're talking about today. So I'm going to share them with you. And if I get time, I will try to put them in a handout. I might not have time to do that today. So jot these down if you want to. All right. Irony number 1. These were his words, not mine, but I thought it was poignant and well spoken. He says in our conversation about this, said, you know, none of this shit that we do here on this planet really matters. And yet this shit actually matters. Irony number 1, none of the stuff that we're really doing here, all the doing that we engage in on this planet really matters, but yet our being here really matters. Number 2, irony number 2, thought this was good. Most of what happens here in this 3D mortal world that we're on, this globe, has little to no meaning, most of it, except for if we take what we're doing here and leverage it for our ascension. Let me repeat. Most of what we do here that happens to us here in this 3D density reality that we've plugged into, most of it doesn't matter unless we leverage it for our spiritual growth and ascension. That's pretty key and ironic. Irony number 3. These are his words, not mine, but and I'm not going to use his name because I didn't ask for permission. But number 3, resilience and sovereignty are paramount. Resilience and sovereignty are paramount, especially when we're considering who we are, where we came from, and where we're going, and the ascended path that we all find ourselves on. Resilience and sovereignty are paramount. We volunteered to be born into this prison. Juliet says, cutting religious ties, way more difficult for me. Well, yeah, because think of what happens when you cut those ties. What happens when you unplug from cultural norms, societal norms, religious programs? What happens when you cut ties with that and you kind of step out of the box, I guess, so to speak? Then you're going to be shamed and shunned and shushed for what you're doing. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to feel alone in the world. Nobody wants to feel rejected. And so because of our fear of, these programs and what we stand to lose by veering off course or stepping away, fear keeps us in line. And fear is also a great tool that the elites use to get you to comply with the system so that they can benefit from your efforts. And they do. So I want you to think about What would it look like to unplug from the work culture? What would it look like to unplug from society and family culture and religious culture? If you veer away, what happens to you? And same with the groupthink of religion and other entities. What happens when you unplug from groupthink? Okay, so let me reiterate irony number 3, which is resilience and sovereignty are paramount. We volunteered to be born into a prison where ultimately the tenets of Christ are the only way out. Think about that. And I do think, you know, I'm starting to think less and less that Christ came here to save us as much as he came here to show us the way out. Please say that again. Okay. We volunteered to be born into a prison system where ultimately the tenets of Christ are the only way out. So the tenets, the virtues, the principles, the doctrines, the true doctrines of Christ, which, by the way, can only be taught by Christ, by having that personal relationship with the divine. When you enter into that personal relationship with the divine, then you'll start learning the true tenets of ascension, spiritual sovereignty, spiritual autonomy, spiritual progression, and growth. Irony number 4. We can tap into the source of all knowledge for ascension. Yet that flow is throttled way back so that we can experience the struggle, the illusions, the deceptions, the duality. We have to find our way through it. So we can, in our progression, tap into the source of all knowledge, which is God, right? We can tap into that for sure. But oftentimes that ability is throttled way back so that we can learn, so that we can experience, so that we can find our way through it, so that we can experience the duality of this mortal plane, what we would consider to be dark versus light, evil versus righteousness, love versus fear, you know, the dualistic experiences that give us contrast so that we can truly appreciate the choices that we're making in whatever direction we choose to go. Okay, so that was irony number 4. Irony number 5. I thought this was good. Man is that we might have joy, and yet we walk through sorrow over and over and over. So how do we find joy? How do we find our bliss? I'm going to pose that question to you. Ponder on that for a minute. Think about it. Drop your comments into the chat box or unmute your mic and share. Man is that we might have joy, and yet we find ourselves walking through sorrow over and over and over. So where do we find joy? Where does that come from? And how do we get there? How do we access it? I'll tell you what I think, if no one's going to go. While you guys are thinking, I'm going to share with you. I feel like I learned this principle probably 25 years ago when I was going through a severe dark night of the soul experience in my own life. And as I went through that dark night of the soul experience, I realized, you know what? Nobody has the right to stand between me and my own inner bliss. No one can take that from me. And I learned that by reading the book Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, where he talked about his experiences surviving 3 different death camps in Nazi Germany during World War II. He talked quite a bit about our perception of things and how, you know, he knew his wife was dead. He knew that his family was gone. At one point, he was chained to a group of men who were being marched up a hill. Some of them didn't have shoes. They were freezing. They were starving. They were cold. Just the inhumanity of the situation was weighing on so many of the men. And some of these men were collapsing and dying right on the side of the road. And he said, the man that I was chained to nudged me in the ribs and said, if our wives could see us now. And then he said he thought about his wife. This actually was an interview, what I'm referring to, an interview that he did years later. But he said, I thought about my wife. I thought about her hair. I thought about her smile. I thought about her personality, her cooking, her presence, how much I loved her. And in that moment, he said, I felt extreme levels of bliss and joy and deep satisfaction for having known her in my life. And there we go. In the midst of the greatest levels of sorrow that human beings have ever stumbled into, here he was having a moment of joy and bliss. And why? Because his heart all of a sudden was filled with love. So my take on all of this, where do we find joy? It's in love. When you're in love, you're in joy. When you're out of love, you're away from joy. You're experiencing suffering. And who is love? God. So anytime you do anything that causes you to be nearer to God through his love, feeling his love for you and for another person, sharing that love with another human being, the byproduct is always going to be joy. Always. It will never not be, and no one can rob you of that. So that's irony number 5. Irony number 6, here's the last one. We're not of this world. We know that we're not from here, and this is not our ultimate destination. But this is where we make the greatest gains in our eternal progression and in our spiritual ascension. This is the gym. And so depending on how you see the eternal plan for human beings, some of you believe in reincarnation, some of you don't, doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, whatever. This is ultimately the gym. This is where we come back to over and over and over, and we must return so that we can ascend through the prison that we're in. So this is actually the practicum. I think there have been times in our spiritual progression, our spiritual journeys, where we have learned at the feet of the divine ones, God the Father, the Divine Mother, possibly Jesus Christ, and other ascended beings who have paved the way, who have been there definitely for us to mentor us and guide us and help us along our journeys. But, you know, spiritually speaking, without coming into the gym, you can read about bodybuilding till the end of time, until you know everything about it. But that's just knowledge. And the knowledge isn't going to do anything for you, for your physical structure or spiritual structure, until it's applied. And so that's why we come here, to this prison system, to this world, to experience what we're experiencing, to have the duality, to have the, the ascension, the opportunity to arise. Okay. Anybody have any epiphanies that they want to share in regards to those 6 main ironies as to why we're here and what this is about and why sovereignty is so important?
I just wanted to say that it was so cool to hear you talk about life as a gym, because I struggled recently thinking like life is a test, but I have like so much test anxiety that wasn't working for me. And so I started to think of it as a gym, and it was so cool because I often like doubt myself, but it was really nice to hear you say that, to be like, oh, maybe I can trust myself and my higher self that's telling me these things. So thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing that. I love it. I love it when we have epiphanies over some of these things, and then we can share them with each other, and I lift you and you lift me, and together we get to ascend. So Juliet says, we are tasked to walk the spiritual path with practical feet. Practicum reference. Yeah. This is practicum for sure. And yeah, maybe life is not necessarily a test as much as it is an opportunity for our ascension and our growth. And you know what? We all play different roles. Who's to say that you didn't come here and play the role of evil for someone so that they could ascend? Who's to say that you didn't come here and play the role of love for someone so that they could step into love and ascend, right? So, you know, perhaps in our progression along our paths, who knows how old our souls are and our spirits are? We don't know. We don't have the answers to that right now because we're still in amnesia. But along our journeys, who's to say that we haven't played a myriad of different roles for each other and for ourselves, for our experience, for our learning, for our growth. And so it's one of the reasons why, too, judging other people and pointing the finger and saying, oh my gosh, they're lost. They're doing it wrong. They've lost their salvation, or they've lost this, or they are lost. You don't know. You don't know if they're lost or not, because that's between them and God. The other thing I think that is really important as we develop our spiritual sovereignty and autonomy is learning how to listen to the ultimate guidance of our soul and our heart. That's how you hear the voice of God, is by following your heart and your soul, learning how to get in there and really tap into the depths of your soul, the foundation of your soul, and listening, and then being willing to act on what you receive, even if it causes you to veer away from the groupthink, or out of boxes, or out of boats, or out of the systems that we've been conditioned to think are the end all be all system. How do you know? How do you know? All these different labels of what's right and what's wrong. You don't know what's right and what's wrong for you until you've tapped in and communed with the divine to get those answers for yourself. And at the same time, other people's journey might look very different from your journey. So it's really almost impossible to categorize and put people by the millions into one box, because you don't know what their journey is. You don't know what their path is. You don't know where they are in their ascension level, what role they're playing, none of that. So you can't judge. All right. I want to talk a little bit about questions. I'm going to pose a few questions for you guys. You could journal these out. This might be a really good opportunity for you in your own processing to just ask a few questions to yourself, to your higher self, in order to get more clarity for you. And I'm no authority. So I had a session with somebody yesterday, and they said to me after the end of the session, so do you think I should? And then he filled in the blank with something. And I was like, I'm not the authority in your life. I can't answer that question for you. If your higher self says that you should, then you probably should. You should do what your heart is guiding you to do, even at the expense of being shamed and shunned and having the finger pointed at you. So, all right, here are a few questions. Feel free to jot these down if you want to. If this system, you pick whatever system is bothering you the most right now, wasn't dictating to me, I would, and then fill in the blank. If this system was not dictating to me, I would, fill in the blank. If I wasn't afraid, I would, and fill in the blank. Because oftentimes it's the systems that have you enslaved and in bondage that want you to be afraid to step out of the system in order to follow your heart. So if I wasn't afraid, I would, and fill in the blank. Next one. If people outside of me weren't resisting me, So if people outside of me, in my relationships, in my friendships, in my work environment, at home environment, whatever, if these people weren't resisting me, I would, and fill in the blank. Okay, and the next one, if I had more time, think about that. If I had more time, I would. Think about how the different systems manipulate and control what you're doing by controlling your time. Think about work, think about church, think about family, think about obligations, all the obligations on you. For what? For what? For the privilege to survive? If I had more time, I would. And how can we boldly and fearlessly break out of some of these systems in order to create a new system of behaving and operating, where we do the things that we love and we pursue the things that we love and we serve humanity from the perspective of what we love? And we see a need and we fill that need. And then guess what? By law, the laws of the universe, those resources, blessings, needs that need to be met will come back to you. They'll be returned to you by law, because that's how the universal laws work. What you put out is what comes back to you. I had this discussion with a client just yesterday who was asking me, how much do you charge for what you do? I said, I don't charge for what I do. I don't put a price tag on what I do. I see a need, I fill the need. And I know that who I work for is God. I work for God. God pays my bills. God facilitates and fills the needs that I have. Now, that's a lot more difficult to operate that way because it requires a tremendous amount of faith and trust that God's really going to deliver and help you pay your bills and feed your family. But it can be done. And I think it's a more ideal way of doing things, rather than putting a bond or a contract on the things that you do, the way that you give. Just giving freely, see the need, fill the need, don't keep score and don't keep track, but let God facilitate the reimbursement to you. I've seen it work. I've been living this way for more than 3 years. And the abundance and the prosperity and the ability to survive has never not been there. It's always been there in one way or another, in one form or another. And it didn't come from my clients. It didn't come because I put a price tag on what I was doing with my clients. It came because I put something out into the universe in the form of a gift, and the universe gifted me back something in the form of satisfying a need that I had in the right time, at the right moment, at the right place. That is the world we're moving into. The society and the world that we have been conditioned to be bonded to and to be in bondage to is passing away. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's passing away. And as it passes away, those parts of society and religion and culture and all the things, those parts that you're clinging to are going to produce suffering unless you're willing to just let go and develop that trust, that bond, sacred bond of trust with God instead of humans. Okay, we have some comments here, and then I'm going to do my last question to you guys. Here's a quotation. After he was freed from Akka, prison city in Palestine, today in Israel, he traveled to the west Europe, USA, and Canada to share the Baha'i teachings. At a talk in New York in US in 1912, he said, "I was happy in imprisonment. Nobody who saw me imagined that I was in prison. They beheld me in the utmost joy, complete thankfulness and health, paying no attention to the prison." Boom. Mic drop. Thank you for sharing that. That quote was regarding Abdul Baha, center of the covenant in the Baha'i faith. I probably slaughtered that, sorry. Lisa says, please read the first one again. Well, let's see if I can find it. I'm assuming that you're talking about these 6 ironies,
Somebody put it
right?
in the chat. Somebody put it in the chat, Janet. It's good.
Okay, all right. This is me not
Thanks.
paying attention to all the chats. Okay. Alicia says, how do we take those thoughts on those questions and know which desires are from a need to heal and which are God guiding us? Ooh, that's a good question. Anybody have answers for that? I don't know that I have the answer for that. How do we take those thoughts on those questions and know which desires are from a need to heal and which are God guiding us? Well, I think that ultimately, your higher self knows where you're going. Your higher self knows how to get there too. And your higher self is in a perfect state of union with God. So basically, your higher self and God are one. So when you learn to let go of the programming of the ego, the intellect, the mind, the physical mortal persona of you, and learn to tap into your higher self and let that govern you, let that whisper to your soul, let that nudge you and pull you along in life. It doesn't matter which is which at that point because they're both one and the same. So you're either listening to your ego, your mind, your personality, your persona, or you're listening to the divine intelligence that comes from the foundation of your soul, and that's God. So let's tap in. Hold on. Katie says, I think if the questions allow for an awareness of a place in your vessel of suffering, then that's an area that the Christ within you is showing needs healing versus walking it out. That's a great answer. Thanks, Katie. That's a really good answer. I love that. Okay, the last question I think I had was, the one before that was, if I had more time, I would. If I had more money, I would. That's a great question too, because it's not about the money. It's not about the doing. It's not about the time. It's about where is your higher self, your higher soul guiding and leading you to go? Where are you being guided by your heart? So let's tap in so that we can get some guidance today. I want everybody to just kind of slow down and become very body aware. I want you to become very, very aware of your body in this moment. So breathe. The best way to become aware of your body. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth and nose, or one or the other, you decide. Just breathe in, breathe out. On the exhale, I'm going to invite you to just let go. Letting go of tension, letting go of tightness, letting go of whatever you're clinging to or holding on to. Just breathe in and breathe out. On the exhale, drop your shoulders. And I want to invite you to take all of your attention and all of your awareness and go deep down into your body. So let's pretend that you have this beam of light going through the center of your body. Like this pen is a beam of light and it goes down through the center of your body. Down behind your eyes, down through your throat, down through the heart, down through the upper stomach, the lower stomach, and it anchors in at the base of the spine. Also, simultaneously, it can also split and go down through the hips and both of your legs out through your feet, through the bottoms of your feet. That center line is your midline. That's your center. So I want you to think about your midline right now as you breathe. Just go into center. Drop your shoulders. I'm going to invite you with the breath to breathe in. You're going to have to pretend. But again, pretend. What is pretending? It's probably more connected to reality than what your brain is perceiving. So go into the subconscious, into the third eye, going into your imagination. I want you to pretend that you're breathing in large amounts of liquid light. Just drink it in. Liquid light. It's like you're underneath the ocean, but the ocean isn't water. It's beautiful, radiant, luminous, warm, loving light. It represents everything that you need that you didn't get. It represents everything that you need, that you want, you desire, you seek. All the nurturing, all the love, all the attention, all the validation, all of the enoughness. Breathe it in. All the money, all the resources, all the time, all the answers, all the healing. Breathe it in the form of liquid light. And as you breathe that in, bring that light into your bones. Bring it into your cells. And on the exhale, drop your shoulders a little bit and just let go. So the inhale, you're breathing in everything you need, that you think you need, or that you think you want, and you're filling yourself up with it. On the exhale, you're breathing out everything that you don't. Everything that you don't need or don't want or don't care to cling to anymore. All the stuff that you want to release. Release on the exhale. So breathing in what you need on the inhale, liquid light coming into your bones, coming into your cells. Breathe it in, drink it deeply. Exhale, letting it go. Just spilling it out and letting it go. Breathe in, breathe out, let go. So could you breathe out a little bit longer on the exhale? Could you breathe out all the gunk on the exhale? All of the fear, all of the programming, all of the control, all of the bondage, all of the chains that have been around you all this time that you've been on this planet, the cages that you've been in. Can you just breathe those out and let them go? Breathing in all the liquid light, stepping out of the cage. On the exhale, letting go of all of the guilt for ruining people's lives as a result of you following your heart. Letting all of that go. Breathing in all the self-love that you need, all the gratitude and all the forgiveness, all of the enoughness. I am enough. I am worthy. I am safe. I am healthy. I am. I am. And just, could you just say out loud, I am. Breathing in the liquid light, breathing out all the gunk. Letting go of all the prisons, the cages, the boxes, the boats, the program, the manipulation, the control, the bonds, the legalities, the obligations, the unhealthy commitments. Somebody said to me, well, you know what? Spiritual sovereignty and autonomy is nice and all, but we still live in a mortal 3D world, and we still have to function in this world, and we still have to comply to the rules of society. And to that, I would say, to the degree that you believe that is to the same degree that you will have boxes and prisons around you. So the remedy is belief. The remedy is belief. If you know that there's something that your heart is calling you to do and you feel a higher calling to do it, you should do it. You should do it. You don't have to do it. You're not obligated to do it. But if you don't, you're going to experience suffering and you're going to experience stagnation in your growth. The whole point of coming here is to learn to grow out of these boxes and out of these prisons. Did you guys ever watch The Truman Show? It's a lot like that. It really reminds me of that. Every time I watch that show, every time I go out into the world, I think about The Truman Show. And I'm like, all these materialistic programs and the commercials, and you just look at that stuff. And the more that you wake up to it, the less you can ignore it. Go ahead, Sharice.
I think if all you can see is those chains, those cords, those connections, those contracts, and we can't live in this world without it. It actually comes from inside. It's a belief that you have. It's just a perception, but our beliefs will dictate how we see the world. So you might need to go inside and do some belief work as well too, because it will affect how you see things, right? Sure, you can unplug and disconnect from, for a moment, but you're going to reattach and you're going to, well, we need this. I need to have this, right? Well, no, you actually don't. And it is kind of like the Truman Show. It is just a perception. It's an illusion that we create. Like putting on those rose-colored glasses or whatever filters that we want. Our beliefs are our filters. And so how we see the world is our perception. And it's very, 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 it comes from inside.
Yeah.
If you can do your inner work, clear your beliefs that are holding you back, and or creating a perception to you that is that of bondage, or that of if you can release those beliefs, find them, dig on them, you will be able to see so much clearer. It is like the Truman Show. You're right.
It is a lot like it. People hold on to what they know, and it's scary to let that go.
Well, when you've been born into slavery and born into bondage, I mean, we all are in the society that we live, every single one of us. I mean, just like programs on TV, they're called programs for a reason. They're programming our children. They're teaching our children. If we don't teach our children, society will. It's right there. And yeah, we are programmed. And even other, it's just a human thing, right? To be a part of this family, you have to live in these, you have to do these things. And if you don't do these things, then you can't be a good member of our family, right? If you're not a good member of our church, you have to live by these, rules. Our club, we're in 4-H, and you have to do certain things if you're going to be in 4-H. It's not just a religion thing. It is a human thing. Humans do this. Mm-hmm. We do. So breaking out of those bonds, and it doesn't mean that you can't be a part of a family, and it doesn't mean you can't be a part of a religion that you love. It just takes away the bondage of it. It puts you in a sovereign place that, like those countries that are sovereign countries, they still have relations with other countries.
Yeah.
You can be married and you can be in an autonomous relationship. You can be a sovereign being in a marriage. You can be a woman and be a sovereign being in a marriage. That is possible. So it's a lot of it is what is possible in your brain, in your beliefs. Is it possible to do that? Well, It's up to you.
Yeah, it is up to you. It is all on us because we are the ones creating the system and the society that we choose to live in. We don't have to settle for, oh, it's already been created for us. It's already been set up for us. And our job is to just comply. I think at the end of the day, we have to allow ourselves the space and the grace to progress without allowing others to pull us back down into the program. Without allowing others to bring us down, like Sharice said, and there's a fine line there. It's a very sensitive dance to be autonomous, but still interdependent with other people, and to be able to nurture healthy relationships with other people. Go ahead, Lisa.
I try to visualize what it might be like without all these systems. And it just seems like chaos, like no order. Like, how would things even work? It's like, help me to envision. Or is it just that these systems exist and you detach from them so that you're fine without those systems?
I think that the order is love. That's what brings things into order. The systems are already in chaos. I don't know if you've noticed that, but
Very
the chaos is already there under the illusion of rules and structure and systems that have been imposed upon humanity. And so the charge is on us to either buy into that system mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, or not. The charge is on us to either buy in or not. But I think what brings things into order is God, is the love of God. God is a God of order. Love the human systems. Yeah, the human systems are chaos. Yes, agreed. Good.
Well, like, for example, some of the systems bring people together for community. So it's like, okay, if you didn't have these systems for community, the community would just naturally establish itself through love and somehow, connecting with people in a different way, because you're not, say, meeting them through 4-H or through a baseball league or yeah.
I think, being autonomous and being sovereign doesn't necessarily mean that you are an island and that you just operate all alone by yourself and then there is no relationship in these systems. You can still operate within the systems, but without allowing the systems to control you. I think that Sharice has a comment. Go ahead, Sharice.
I don't know if anybody's ever read the little book by it's called You Are Special it's a children's book. I love books, but
Max
yeah,
Lucado.
by Max Lewis. Yes. So in the story, it's the little wooden people, for those that haven't read it, and there's the little Punchinello. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He's in the town of wooden people, and if you're special, if you can do something special, they will give you a star. But if you can't do anything special, and if you're just kind of plain and normal, or if you kind of mess up in life, they give you a dot. And Punchinello had so many dots that he couldn't even see his wood. He couldn't do anything special. He just felt awful, right? Because he tried, but he just couldn't do it. And then he sees this other little wooden girl that comes skipping along, and she doesn't have any stars and she doesn't have any dots. She's clean. She's still in the town. She still is among the Wemmicks. And he asks her, how do you not have any stars? No stars and no dots. And she says, I don't know. They just fall off. I don't have them. People try and stick them on me, but they fall off. So he says, well, how do you do this? And she says, I go and see the woodmaker or the wood carver every single day. I go and I talk to him and I sit with him and he talks with me, and she doesn't really know why, but they just don't stick to her. Right. So this little wood man, she takes him to the wood carver, and the wood carver is very excited to see Punchinello, and he talks to him and builds up his self-esteem, and his dots start to fall off at the end of the story. But I see that as a metaphor for our individuality and our autonomy, that if we are connected to the creator of all that is, if we connect to him every single day, does it really matter what the 4-H leaders think of me? Does it really matter what the bishop thinks of me? Does it really matter what my guru thinks of me? No, they're not the creators. It is our creator of all that is. What matters is how we live our lives. Are we following what we feel inside? Like Janet says, our higher self. Are we following our hearts? That little girl, the little one that didn't have any stars, she was still in the town, and she still talked with people, and she still participated in things, but she did not need the stars or the dots of anyone else to find her worth. She found it through her creator. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Sorry.
So perfect. And don't apologize. That was so perfectly shared and at the perfect timing. I love that. That's the perfect note to end on for today. So as we close this session out, this conversation out, thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much. I didn't think anybody was going to show up. So the fact that you're all on here is really warms my soul. I love meeting with you guys every week. If you want to get the Zoom links emailed to your inbox, you can go to janetthurgood.com. If you would like to participate in the community, you can go to Greater Life, Greater Impact in the Facebook group. There's also a Telegram channel under the same name. And the links to those will be in the description underneath the YouTube video after this gets posted. Thank you guys for being here. Tap into your higher self, drop down into your body, go to the foundation of your soul, find that stillness within you. Breathe and soften, breathing in all the stuff you need, breathing out all the stuff you don't, and find that stillness within you and let that determine where you're going. What's the next right step in front of you? How can you relate, being interdependent with other souls, relating to others through love instead of codependence or instead of neediness or clinginess, finding your sovereignty and autonomy through higher levels of ascension and love, honoring free will. As long as you're doing those things, our relationships and our connections with one another on the planet will start to shift. They'll be a lot more meaningful, less controlling, less manipulative, less toxic. And we can literally change the economy, the culture, the community of this planet by just going in and changing how we are seeing things and how we are perceiving things. All right. Have a blessed day. Thanks for being here. Take care. Mwah. Bye, everybody.